uhlungana kandaba uhlungana wombelebele ohluke emanqulumeni kwaze kwasamanquluma esebikelana ilembe lekamalembe yabo ngokukhalipha unodumehle sikamenzi sishaka sishayeki umntaka senza ngakhona ushaka ngesaba lokuthi mshaka ushaka kwinkosi yasema
Rise of a Nation, sounds from a liberated Bantu.
Ikubi Bana Bantu. Mutoto wa Kibantu.
All praises to Sormini Narnini. Umhandla Bana Bermuntu. Barwo, Oswemazuluini.
Generation everywhere in the world, the story is told to children in a way to enrich the mind of the children, but if they told the reality to the child might not understand it. So this is why you have so many variation where you were giving one understanding of the creation as a child, this person was giving another, this person was giving another, then you grew up, but you never went beyond that. You just took it and you lived with it as your definite understanding. That's what I can say.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Mr. Mitri. Sir Amadeo, what is your view on that? You can mute your mic.
Okay, restate the question for me again.
Well, one species of humanity, but different stories of creation. Why?
Well, again, first of all, giving all praises to the Holy One of Israel, to the Anointed. I greet each and every one of you in the Hebrew, ancient African Hebraic tongue. Shalom, peace be unto you. Glad to have you, have me on this particular panel. In watching the full clip with Credo Mutwa, I made notes here about how there were so many parallels, and we don't have to call them antecedents. It's not necessary for us to bicker and fuss about whose story came first, for us to try to actually figure out the beginning is futile. But I noted that, as Credo was laying out the different elements of his cosmology, that both male and female, that dew watered the earth, that there was the language of the people was confounded, that I was hearing all of that knowledge, the imparting of knowledge was what characterized the beginning. And so all of these are elements, I would say, of many different cosmologies and different creation stories. As an African Hebrew, my foundational ontology and creation story is rooted in what people call the Bible, Torah. Now, the problem I run into is that people don't see that as an African text. And that's problematic, first of all, because of where the biblical stories unfolded. They are rooted in Northeast Africa. The language of Hebrew is an African language. And so a lot of times I then have to wage war almost, or at least to defend the idea that the Bible, the biblical stories, the biblical narratives are African stories. They are, they have to be perceived and heard and interpreted from the African perspective. If not, then you will be in left field. And that is what has happened globally. It's not a Christian text. It's not a Eastern European text. It's a Northeast African text. And when we begin to explore it from that perspective, it begins to make more sense than if it's interpreted from a European or any other perspective. And so we can understand easily how there are numerous stories. We know that there are numerous flood stories around the earth. Well, it was a global cataclysm. It was a global deluge. And so each surviving culture would certainly have had their own flood stories and flood traditions and narratives and myths, whatever we want to call them. They are, as the brother said, these stories that are essential for us putting in context what our purpose is as peoples. So that's just that's my opening.
Thank you so much.
What
Yakubi, Bana, what are your thoughts on this? And then we can move on to our session for today. Yakubi.
Well, greetings to the esteemed panel. I greet you in the name of the mighty one of the Bantu, Sonini Nanini Somandla. Just like Sir Amadiel, I believe whatever is contextualized in what they call the scriptures or the Bible is actually an African story, but with one diversion in that nothing happened in the Negev. That was a diversion. Everything happened in sub-Saharan Africa. We have proof of the locations. So when it comes to the creation of man, my opening will be that man was actually created in the cradle, Emboland, the birthplace, the East Gate, in sub-Saharan Africa. To be precise, in the Congo, because we did not have borders as we know them today. That was the Northern Kingdom, from Senegambia in the west, Kenya in the east, down to South Africa. I hand it over back to you, Zola.
Thank you so much. The topic of creation is very vast, so we wanted today's session to just be an introduction into the session, and then we plan to have each of our speakers that you saw today. Now we're going to allocate a particular Sunday for them to be able to dive deeper into the whole process of creation, and then we'll have different questions. But for today, we'll just be having an introductory session just for the speakers to just give a brief explanation of what exactly happened according to how they believe it in just about 10 to 15 minutes each. And I hope, I don't see Brother Kagiso has not joined us, Brother Zola Mkulu. I don't know if Brother Zola Mkulu, are you there? And Brother Maxwell hasn't joined us as well. So we're going to continue with the session for today. You know, Brother Zahir comes from the Muslim background. We didn't play a clip from the Islam point, but I believe that the Christianity point of creation is the same as the one for the Islam. Right, Brother Zahir, if you can hear me.
Yes, yeah, the one who comes in peace is always welcome. Positive energy, creation energy to one and all. Yeah, so yeah, that's my background is Islam, and yeah, no, I think in the Quran it does speak about you know, we come from clay or soil. You know, that's the you know, that's there's a verse that specifically refers to that.
Interesting. We have Miss Faith Vimbai. Well, Miss Faith, what are your views? Are you of the same view, Miss Faith?
I've just joined, so I'm still trying to find my footing. Maybe I'll comment later.
Wonderful. Then we're gonna dive right in. Our first presenter is Mr. Amadeo, and we're going to give him 10 to 15 minutes to give his presentation, Creation of Man from the Hebrew perspective. And then we're going to have Mr. Yakubi, and then we have some questions for Mr. Mitri, because we watched the video in the beginning. We do have some questions for Mr. Mitri, and then we'll move on from there. So Amadeo, over to you.
Okay. All right. I will try to just touch on some central points, because I understand we'll all come back later and get into depth on it, but I'll start off at the beginning. And I think most of us are familiar with the first three words of the biblical text in the book of Genesis, or Bereshit in Hebrew. the first three words are in the beginning. And because of the importance of being able to interpret these words according to their original meaning, means you got to go back to the original language. And when you do that, you realize that the second word in the Bible is mistranslated, and that is the word the, in the beginning. It's Bareshit, and that is not interpreted as in the beginning, it's interpreted as in a beginning. In other words, the implication there is very clearly that there are other beginnings. There have been other beginnings. And as I said a little earlier, it would be absolutely futile for any of us to think that when we're talking about the idea of an eternal creator or creative force, however we want to relate to that superior being, that great God presence, that to try to render that as anything other than infinite is again futile. You wouldn't be able to do that. And in fact, in the idea of the name, of the Hebraic name ascribed to that creative person, that personage, Yahweh, that conveys the idea of past, present, and future. All three of those ideas, concepts, time, conceptual ideas are wrapped up in the name itself. And so the eternal one, how do you put a beginning or an end to something that's eternal? So that's the first problem that we have to encounter and overcome, is that those who want to say, well, this story only goes back 6,000 years, it's not even trying to be a history that goes back to the beginning in that sense. That again would be absolutely nonsensical. You would not be able to accomplish that. And then the other thing that you run into, several things we run into, but the other thing you run into is that when it talks about the earth was void and without form, in English, that renders an idea of something that's empty. There's nothingness there. Void is empty, and without form, there's nothingness. And that's absolutely contrary to the Hebraic idea. In Hebrew, it's that the earth was the tohu vavohu. And tohu vavohu translates into chaos and confusion. And so that is to say that there was something there. It was not nothingness. It was not emptiness. There was something there. There was a world in existence at this particular time, but it was in chaos and confusion. And so the creative, speaking of the words, and there shall be light, light is symbolic of knowledge, of truth, of order. And so into this dark world, the creator said, let me bring some intelligence. Let me put this in some order. And so if I was to fast forward, we would simply say that we are back again, the human family, all over this planet, we are back again at a new beginning. And the earth again is covered with darkness, chaos, confusion. It's in darkness now. And there has to be an ascension of light. And what we're saying is that it's Africa's time to shine. So things have come around full circle in this dispensation of time. So that's another idea. When you talk about the creation of man, Adam and Eve, the idea again from, and we learned this from our Christian imagery that was perpetrated and pushed all over the world, even though we might have thought we were knowledgeable or we were defending because we were too intelligent to fall victim to the ideas, these images, what have you. Nevertheless, we live in a Christian world. We live in a world whose images have dominated the airwaves. And so those images of a white Adam and Eve, those images of angels with wings on their backs, winged creatures, et cetera, all of those images have deeply, deeply impressed us and affected the way that we look at the world, the way we look at the players in the world. And invariably, because we always saw these white images, and quite often, like I have it here, quite often, whenever we see these images, where are we in the story? You know, this is Jesus knocking out the devil. They're in the ring boxing, and Jesus is knocking out the devil.
So sorry, if you can unmute. Sorry. Yeah, go on. Thank you. Go on. Sorry.
All right, got you. I saw it come up. So we have to counter this idea, or these ideas that have deeply, deeply impressed brothers and sisters around the world from yay high, from the smallest of children looking at these images on the walls of our churches, in the walls of our homes. Many of our parents and grandparents had these images there. Those who had Bibles in the homes, the pictures said everything about it. And so Adam and Eve were not a couple, you know, because later on, if you read, and very few people have actually taken the time to read, to embed themselves into a serious study of these stories, of these terminologies, of these chapters and verses. So when you have Adam and Eve who bore Cain and Abel, and Cain slew Abel, or excuse me, Abel, right? Cain slew Abel. And then later on, it reads that Cain went to the land of Nod and he took a wife. He went to another place and he took a wife. He embraced a woman and married her. So then what is that saying? Did he marry his sister? And it would have to be that if Adam and Eve were the progenitors of all human beings on the planet. So obviously that would be incest. And 6,000 years ago, obviously we would still be witnessing the genetic mutations and the problems that would go with intermarriage at that kind of level. So you realize that there are other people on the planet. This is not a history of all humanity. It's a history of a particular beginning. And so all of that is to say that, except that we break down these stories, because I'm sure that we don't actually believe that, you know, we were led into a green cave or a red cave and we came out. These are stories, these are narratives. There's a message. And what is the message behind what Credo was sharing with us? What are the symbolisms? What are the metaphoric representations that we are now having to, or being challenged to decipher and make it make sense for us in 2021? And so, again, and I even kind of hinted earlier in my private communications with my brother, that there are lots of other issues that I think we need to delve into, and because we could keep tracing back and going back and back. It's like a tree, and if we're trying to create a field of produce, and we want to farm, and we need to turn the soil so that we can then have a productive field, and there's this big huge tree in the middle of it. Well, if we want to, we could trace one of those roots and trace those roots all the way into the next country if need be. Some trees got roots like that. But at a certain point, you pull up the root and then you can chop it off so we can get that core out of the way and begin to do the kind of farming, in other words, the kind of knowledge cultivation that needs to happen in the areas of a diet that would elevate us, that would sustain us. No sense us talking about being revolutionaries and we're not eating a revolutionary diet. You know, our culture, our agriculture our relationship to the soil. And so all of that is actually contained. I heard, and I'm gonna wrap up on this point. I heard my brother, what's my brother's name? Mitri Manek. Did I pronounce it correctly? That our brother was talking about not being formed from clay and not being formed from dust. Well, biblically, it does say that man was formed from the dust of the earth. Well, that's what it says in the English. But in the Hebrew, it says the minerals of the soil, afar me adama, which means the minerals of the soil. And of course, we know that minerals is a lot. You know, dust is a nuisance. If it get in your glasses, you got to dust them up. If it gets in your laptop or your cell phone, you got a problem. It gets in your throat. You know, it's a nuisance. But minerals carries another connotation, and one that's quite valuable. And of course, gold and diamonds. Name the minerals, and any mineral that you can name that is in the soil, you're going to find it in the human body. And so that gives us another perception of what it was talking about when it says we were created from the minerals of the soil, and therefore then we were given plants that do what? Plants uptake those minerals and restore that into our bodies. And so there's another message there that, when correctly interpreted, makes sense for us in this dispensation of time. So with that, I just want to say I think that kind of frames a bit of where I wanted to go with that. In talking about this beginning, this particular dispensational beginning, because if we were again charged to go back and try to figure out where all those roots led us, it's futile. I'm glad I heard my brother earlier say that he didn't believe in that evolution, because I've been to Sterkfontein, and I left there thinking there's no way that I would claim those as my ancestors. You know, we did not evolve from apes and monkeys. There had to have been an intelligent root and beginning to where we are, but trying to figure out exactly what that beginning was, forget it, because hey, I wasn't there, so I'm not able to give us that kind of understanding. Selah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. That was absolutely amazing. It's amazing when you say the beginning. So sometimes I ask myself, who's beginning? Huh? So God did not begin when the beginning began. He began the beginning. That would be interesting. Mr. Yakubi, over to you.
Matondo, King brother. Well, I begin on this point. I have studied Yiddish, and I've also studied what they call Paleo-Hebrew. And these are just variations of Bantu words by adding CH and a lot of H's to that. When you talk of water, mayim, in my mother tongue, it's mai. When you talk of Zion, in my mother tongue, it's Sayuni, Mount Kenya. You see, what we need to do is to decolonize religion. The white man's mighty one looks like him. When you go to the Chinese, their mighty one looks like them. And it's that way across the board. But when we come to Africa, we want to believe in the white man mighty one. So I do not subscribe to any of that. This is what I subscribe. And this is what my ancestors knew to be the truth. And this is what I know to be the truth. Creation comes about from the cosmic force of creation, the self-existent one, the one that was, is, and is to come. He's known by many names among my people. In the Congo, they know him as Tatan Zambia Mpungu. In the East, we know them as Ngai Murungu Mwenenyaga, which will surprise Amadiel because all these names mean I am. What we have as the Bible is an esoteric book. It's just scrolls, Bantu scrolls, stolen from Kumka in South Africa. What we know to be Jerusalema, what they tried to do, calling Jerusalem, we know this, whatever we have been presented is the work of the Luciferian priesthood. We have it on good authority. We teach this on Bantu re-education. So this is my understanding of how creation becomes. There's the animation of whether you call it dust, whether you call it carbon, It does not matter because none of us was actually there to accurately point out that this was what is used. But the little science that we have proves that the human body consists of carbon. So yes, there's a supreme being that creates man or woman, whoever came first, depending on what you subscribe to. But my people say that was Gekoyo, the father of the nations, the big tree, who the Bible will have you know as Adam, or whatever name you subscribe, because we have irrefutable proof. They stole our history, mapped on the Babylonian Talmud, and represented that to us as the King James, represented that to us as the Sifa, and all the versions that they have there. These were actually things that happened on the continent. In the East Gate, why is it that we are told everything in the garden was perfect, yet we only sub-Saharan Africa is able to experience equal days and equal nights? Why is it that sub-Saharan Africa gets to have all the minerals, but yet it is kept in poverty? The moment we decolonize religion, and start listening to the stories of old, because they have been kept, and stop listening to that foreign doctrine, you cannot claim African descent, yet you're subscribing to something that is not African. They have demonized ancestral worship because they know our ancestors never die. They hold the keys to this information. Everything that is African, everything that pertains African spirituality, everything that pertains the African understanding of creation has been demonized. And I'm sure there is somebody from South Africa. If you look at the Bantu stories about creation, they all have this concurrence. There is the existence of a supreme being who takes the dust of the earth, animates this using Ntu, the cosmic force of creation. Call it the spirit, call it the Mpeve, whatever you want to call it. I was not there. There has been the phonetical evolution of language. There has been the phonetical evolution of language. That is why you will find Bantus who spoke one language, Congolela. Now there are over 2,500. We know who is responsible for that diversion, but there's one thing that unites us, and that is Ubuntu. We need to decolonize these stories. Our ancestors have told us the truth. Whatever you want to believe, there is the cosmic force of creation. There is a mighty one, a self-existent one, whether you call him an energy, whether you call it a force, because what everybody here fails to explain to me is when we get to the beginning, there's nobody that explains the beginning. Nobody can explain the beginning. Whether we're talking of a sperm, where did that sperm come from? You're going to tell me of the Big Bang. What was there before the Big Bang? So when we talk of creation, of man, of all that exists, flora and fauna, it has to be attributed to a mighty one. And the more we get to understand this mighty one, and the only way we can do and to understand this mighty one is to search from within and to decolonize religion. Because we know what religion is. It's Latin for ligare, to bind again. Religion is just supposed to lock us. I'm not in any religion. I practice African spirituality. And I'll place my African spirituality over any world religion. Bring your mighty one, I'll bring mine. We'll see the one that is true. And I close it at that.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Yakubi. Thank you. That was very, very interesting. And I would like to jump right to Mr. Mitri, because Mr. Mitri, we watched the video that you of you explaining on creation, and you mentioned something important. You said that the creatures, they left the sperms in the waters by the Congo. Mr. Mitri is in the same agreement with Mr. Yakubu that creation began in the Congo. You mentioned the sperms were in the water left by different creatures. I mean, Could you specify, was the creature looking like an ape or was it looking like an elephant? Which creatures exactly left the sperms in the water to combine together to start the creation? And maybe you can also give your input on what you've heard from Sir Amadiu and also Yakubi. Over to you, Mr. Mitri.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. And the thing is, we are actually parallel to each other more than these brothers realize. We are actually parallel to each other. I do know that the fragmented African stories is what's in the Bible. I do know that 1,000,000,000% the fragments of African stories were put into the Bible. But, you know, when interpretation happens, there's going to be, what you call it, not a whole, you're not going to get the accuracy right. You're not going to get 100% accuracy. You will get a superficial version of the accuracy. So these stories were organically African in the Bible, but they were, you know, converted through superficial means, which it watered down the story itself. The other brother spoke about the mighty one. And I 1,000,000,000% in agreement with the brother as well. You know, the thing about what I want us to understand is when I talk about creation, when I tell the story of creation, I tell it from the outside of the physical world. I don't tell it from the imagination, because the thing with us human beings, our imagination is our default position. It's our default position. It's how we navigate the world. It's where, I have a lecture on the imagination. I'll see if I can give you guys the compartments where I kind of compartmentalize the imagination, and I divided it into 5 parts, where is the perception, which is the ability to manipulate image or receive image. And then there is the memory, which is the ability to store image. There is the learning, which is the ability to disintegrate image. There is the emotion, which is the interpretation of those images and the feelings that you gain from that. And then there's the foresight, the ability to rebuild those images into something that to your liking. So sometimes when we hear a story or we read a book, right, the script is communicating with our imagination. And our imagination goes through these processes that I just mentioned. And we are able to rebuild those images in our mind, giving those images life. And because of this process of giving image life in the imagination, sometimes you can be stuck in the imagination. You can be trapped in it. But if you always want to just understand the world, you have to just go in the real world. Go outside, put your hand in the dirt and feel the soil. Touch the tree, take one of the leaf, put it in your mouth and feel the flavor or the taste of it. Smell something, splash water in your face, look at water in a glass, feel the rain wet your skin, put your hand in a crocodile's mouth, or hug a lion, whatever you want to do to feel the real world, right? You have to always maintain the real world as your default position. Now, we know the seasons have always existed, right? And I will get to the brother's question here. We know the seasons have always existed. We know that summer, even a child is born today, if that child is born into winter, if that child lives in long enough, that child will wake up in summer and spring and fall. You can tell the child being born today, hey, there's going to be fall, there's going to be winter. The child might not know, right? Because they haven't experienced it yet. But if the child lives long enough, it's going to be a fact, a definite reality. All of us have gone through this process. When we are born, right, we come from the womb, we have to drink water, breast milk, graduate to food, walk, crawl, get vitality. After vitality, we wane our energy, then we become, and then we go back to the process. So these processes are all cyclical. All the cyclical processes are fixed into the universe, right? Why are the cyclical process fixed into the universe? They're fixed into the universe because the brother said order is what is needed, right? When you say order, order is the balancing principles that was established, where everything can grow within those principles, everything can refine itself, everything can recycle within in the environment, and then become unlimited in that process. So this is some of the stuff I want to talk about. Now, I said I don't think you guys saw the new lecture on the Organic African Paradigm channel, YouTube channel, but there's a new lecture called Blood and Bones, Origin of the African People, which I talk about the actual substance that produced the African people. Now, I talk about African people coming from the trees. They're being produced from trees. This thing called carbon, what we call carbon, right? Carbon is basically burn wood. If you burn wood, if you take fire and put it to wood, right? It burns the wood and the wood becomes charred, coal, what you call coal, right? This is carbon, right? Coal. So trees, right? I talk about trees and I say trees, they survive off of nitrogen. Their default nutrients is nitrogen, right? But they don't get nitrogen like that. How do they acquire nitrogen? They have to, the bacteria, the germs in the soil break down the nitrogen and the trees absorb the nitrogen. And once the tree absorb the nitrogen, they go through the same process that we Africans go through with melanin. You know how melanin absorbs solar radiation and convert it to energy? They go through the same process and then they produce what? Oxygen, and we produce carbon monoxide for them, right? And what is our DNA made of? I told you guys that the DNA of a human being is made out of nitrogen, right? So the most vital element for trees, plants, is nitrogen. And from that DNA, when the plants create that DNA is where you get the sperm from. So you get the egg. When a plant wants to shed its seeds, how does it do? I have a tree right outside of my house. It has these tiny seeds. It will drop the seeds into the soil. If I don't pull those seeds out, a plant will sprout. You know, it will reproduce itself. So what I'm trying to tell you is, in the origin, where this sperm come from, this sperm you're talking about is, you're looking at it from the human context. Think of it as you are DNA, the original carrier of the DNA. And that carrier was able to find shelter within an egg, a seed. And in that seed, okay, and in that seed is able to absorb the nutrients that is needed for it to produce that life that I talk about. So the sperm, you say where this sperm comes from. This sperm came from the environment that was already here, those elements that were already established. And the production of human DNA is where that comes from. So you'll have to watch the lecture, because I don't want to take up so much of your time, but you'll have to watch that lecture where I give you more information. But for now, I'm just going to say, you say where the sperm come from, the sperm, don't think of it as the human sperm right now. Think of it as it was a DNA which accumulated minerals to form sperm within this pool. Then after it accumulated that mineral, it was able to inhabit the egg, and then it was able to absorb the minerals from the surrounding environment. That's how you should think of it, like that. So I'm going to stop right here. I don't want to confuse you guys any further. Unless you watch that lecture, it would be a total confusion for me to just give you guys information on this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitri, for elaborating it perfectly. We've had Brother Yakubu speaking, Mr. Amadeo as well, and now Mr. Mitri. Brother Max was just joined us. We're going to connect with him soon. We have Sister Osset. I don't know if you're available to say a few words from what you've heard so far. Sister Osset. Okay, we have Ridufat. Yeah, Ridufat. Yeah, would you like to say something before we move on? Ridufat. Yeah. Okay, Sika Bopa, would you like to make a comment before we move on? Sika or Simo? All right. There's so many stories on creation, and I would like just to narrate one quick one from the Congo ancestry, how basically the idea of creation was. Like we said in the beginning, that this is just an introduction session. We're going to have each of the lectures dive deeper in a different session coming up in the coming weeks. But I'm just gonna show something from the Congo ancestry. There are so many stories which have been told on the creation of man. And from the Congo ancestry, there's a belief that usually the existence of the creator is out of the understanding of human beings. Because if you read Brother Paul says that in 1 Timothy 1:16, he says that he lives in unapproachable, inaccessible light, that no human person, no human being or human spirit can phantom his existence. In the Congo ancestry, there's a belief, and it's known that the creator lives in his mantle in the divine kingdom. And he decided to self-manifest. And when he made this first movement that the Bible speaks about, let there be light, out of him, I'm saying him, I'm not saying that the creator is a male, no. The creator is hermaphrodite. He has the masculine, the feminine on the inside. So when he self-manifested for the first time, out of him came out Mama Ndombe, the feminine principle, and also the 4 living creatures mentioned in Revelation, and also the 7 archangels mentioned also in Revelation, also 24 elders. So he made his first movement, let there be light, and there was an appearance. The creator made a movement of his thought that passed through Mama Ndombe. By the way, Mama Ndombe is the queen of heaven. In England, she's called Elizabeth. That is why all the queens that take the throne in England are given the name Elizabeth, because they have a belief that in the divine kingdom, there is a feminine entity called Mama Ndombe. So the radiation energy of Tata Nzambe went through Mama Ndombe, and then on the other side, at the core end of the divine kingdom, there was what we called Vidimkulu, the first man mentioned in Proverbs, the ancient of days. I was the first of his days. And then when Vidimukulu placed himself at the core end of the divine kingdom, the spiritual kingdom was created. The spiritual kingdom was created with 3 principal spirits that came out of him: the primordials, the spirit created autoconscient, and finally the gems of spirits. In the spiritual kingdom, Sir Amadio mentioned about the tohubohu, the chaos that the Bible speaks about. So there was an existence already, that when Vidimukulu appeared in the spiritual kingdom, in the tohubohu, life was manifested, and 3 principal spirits came out of Vidimukulu: the primordials, the spirits created autoconscient, and the last bonds, the gems of spirits. Now let's try to take this image and put it in a vertical architectural alignment. We have the divine kingdom, the 7 archangels, the 4 living creatures, Tata Nzambe, Mama Ndombe, and the 24 elders. Tata Nzambe self-manifests himself, let there be light, and all of a sudden the spiritual primordial kingdom was created, and also the spiritual kingdom was created. So if you remember, if you look at the 7 archangels, there was once an archangel that was called Lucifer, but unfortunately at the moment he's unemployed. He has no job and he's frustrated. So when Tatanzambe placed himself at the core end of the divine kingdom, the spiritual kingdom was created. Let there be light. And out of him, 3 spirits came out: the primordials, the spirits created autoconscient, and the gems of spirits. Unfortunately, the gems of spirits were at a longer distance away from Tatanzambe, and because they were far from Tatanzambe, they were basically what we call unconscious. So the primordials, this is a story which was narrated by the Congo ancestry. The primordials prayed and asked Tatanzambe, can we create for these last bonds a smaller kingdom so they can be able to go over there and evolve and learn consciousness and gain spiritual maturity so they can return back to the spiritual kingdom. And that is how the physical kingdom was created. So one of the archangels, by the way, we call him Nembumba Loa in the Congo ancestry, but he's known as Lucifer. He was given the job to create the physical creation with other entities and others, Simbis that we call the Simbis. They were given the mandate to create the physical kingdom before the arrival of the gems of spirits. So who are the gems of spirit? The gems of spirits are you and me over here on the earth. We are gems of spirits. We come from the spiritual kingdom over here in the Garden of Eden, the 7th level of the spiritual kingdom. That is where we come from. The spiritual kingdom, Eden was actually a spiritual place, you know? And it's not a physical location somewhere, but though when we arrived for the first time in the Congo, like Mr. Mitri said, and Mr. Yakubu said, we arrived in Central Sub-Saharan Africa for the first time. Yes, in that region of the heart of Africa, that is where we landed for the very first time to do our experience. So the entities created the physical kingdom and divided it into 7 rooms. The Bible speaks of this, but the Luciferian beings in the Council of Nishi, they basically made the 7 rooms into the 7 churches of Asia Minor, but they're actually 7 constellations in the physical kingdom. We have the constellation of Laodicea, the first one, and then we have the constellation of Ephesus, where the planet Earth at the moment is located. So we, as the gems of spirit, we were in the spiritual kingdom, and then we had to descend into Ephesus. The Bible speaks of Adam and Eve's spirit. God chased them out of the garden. It's a symbolic language. They were not chased from the spiritual kingdom. It was a will for them to come and do their experience in the physical kingdom. Now, mind you, these are spirits. They don't have a physical body. Now, how are they going to exist in the physical world? They have to wear a suit. If you want to enter into water, you have to wear a suit that can allow you to survive in water. If you want to enter into fire, you have to wear a suit that can survive in fire. So the entities, first of all, before our arrival, they had to create the physical world. They created the mineral rain, and then they created the vegetative rain. And out of the vegetative rain, that is where the animal rain came from. Dimitri says that we came from plants. Yes, the Bible says that the land gave birth to trees. The land gave birth to animals. It was that process, but squeezed in the Bible as symbols. So the mineral rain was created, and then we had the vegetative rain, and then finally the animal rain was created. So when the animal rain was created in the beginning, before the arrival of man, there were large animals that existed. Dinosaurs, all these animals existed because they had to participate in the creation of the physical earth. The dinosaurs were so large, so they can enable the mix-up of the earth. Animals like the dragons existed because they had to participate by putting on fire and create the volcanoes. So this is an idea of how the Congo ancestry give a story of creation. You know? And when I begin to listen to Sir Amadio, I listen to Mr. Mitchell, I listen to Yakubi, I have an understanding that there's a lot of similarities in these stories. You know? But the question is, how did these gems of spirits like you and me incarnate into the physical earth? You know, the theory of evolution by Darwin was manipulated by Luciferian beings, but there is some truth in there because Darwin was trying to look for the missing link between the primate and the modern man, Homo sapien. He was trying to say we came from animals, but there was an intelligence, like the other authors have mentioned, that there was an understanding and intelligence. What happened? What really happened? So normally when the animal rain arrived at its maturity, Animals existed before human beings. And when a male and a female got together during sex, there is a center of souls in the spiritual kingdom where the animal spirits come from. But there was a cosmic turn in the universe when the Adamic spirits arrived, when these primates were getting together in the process of sex, instead of the soul of an animal incarnating, but instead the germs of spirit entered. The Bible says God killed an animal and dressed them. These are symbolic languages. You know, God killed an animal. Wait a minute, God killed an animal and dressed Adam and Eve. Oh, wow. So the germs of spirit incarnated. So it means when a primate had sex together and they had a child, instead of the soul of the animal entering the primate, instead the germs of spirit entered into the primate by incarnation for the first time. So the process of evolution took a long time because it was difficult for the first time. You know, you enter into, imagine you don't know how to drive a car, and all of a sudden they place you into a car for the first time. You're not going to drive and become a pro like James Lewis Hamilton, no. So they had to take some time for them to master the use of this body. Adam did not just come into the world for the first time, immediately he began to speak languages, he began to organize himself. No, it took a long time for these primates to arrive at evolution, to understand that a different energy and intelligence incarnated them. They began to separate themselves from other animals. They became very specific. They began to organize themselves. And the theory of evolution talks about this. It happened in 10 million years. Now, I do not fully agree with the theory of evolution, the way that Darwin explains it, that we just came from animals. No. Darwin was looking for the missing link. The missing link was, he was not, first of all, he didn't believe in the creator. So he wanted just to create a theory to say that we came from animals, but there was something that happened to these primates, something different. A new energy entered these primates for the first time. And if you read the scriptures, in many of the sacred flame, you come to understand that there's something that happened to the first primate that later on evolved to the modern man that we have today. Now, the period of this evolution took about 10 million years. And when we gained full consciousness, it was around 150,000 years ago when we became a Homo sapien. So this is not to say that because we had to incarnate the body of an animal to evolve, then it limits the power of the creator. No, everything that God does, it happens naturally. You know, look at your body right now. Just look at yourself properly. You have a penis, you have legs, you have hands, you go to the toilet, you have the body of an animal, but you live on the inside. What happens when you die? You leave the body on the floor, you come out, you know? So there are some things that we need to begin to understand when it comes to the creation of man, because people tend to push away this whole idea because of the way it was presented by the Luciferian beings, by the Darwins of the creation. But the Congo ancestry brings knowledge to explain creation in a much wider perspective. You know, so in the following lectures, we'll try to explain much deeper with the other presenters as well. So we are not animals. We live in the body of an animal. It's like you entered into a car. You are not the car. The body that we wear is a body of an animal, but we live inside the body of an animal. And the body of an animal has 4 phases. It is born, it grows, it matures, and it dies. But the spirit is eternal. So you have to get out and come back. So reincarnation is true. So during this period from the 2D up to the 3D, by the way, there was a lot of reincarnation. We were coming, some people were getting eaten by lions, getting fired by the dragons. We had to go and come back. Up to the point where we arrived at maturity, we knew who we were. 150,000 years ago, and then the free will activated. The cosmic time began in Capricorn, and now we are in Aquarius. So there are a lot of stories out there of creation. It asks us to reflect and really think deeply of our origin. Because if you look at yourself, you are an animal. Some people believe we came by spaceships, but those are other debates for other days. I'd like to open up to Brother Maxwell. Brother Maxwell, welcome. If you could jump in Brother Maxwell will give his presentation. Brother Maxwell? Yes, Brother Maxwell.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brother Maxwell.
Okay. How are you guys over there?
Doing great. Thank you for joining us. Yes, we have been speaking about creation, and I think
Sorry that I joined so late.
Can you hear me, Brother Maxwell?
Yeah, I can hear, but you are breaking a little bit, and my network is not 100%, but still, I'll try.
Okay, let's do this. Let's come back to you in minutes, okay?
Okay, all right, no problem.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Sir Amadeo, I don't know if you'd like to say something on what you've heard so far, and then we can have Brother Yakubi and Mr. Mitri, and then hear from the others before we have Brother Maxwell. So Amadeo. So Amadeo, you there?
I'm here. Okay. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I didn't have a lot to contribute. In addition, I was a bit tickled when you said that Lucifer was unemployed at the moment. For me, I would simply look at, or maybe you were referring to a season in the past about him, because we would simply say that based on the current state of the world, that it looks like he's working overtime. But and that we need to put him out of a job, you know. But no, I'm absorbing, I'm listening, and I do agree with our brother, Brother Mitri. I do agree with him to say that there certainly are more parallels than divergences in how we're looking at this thing, and I think a lot of things. The other brother, you know, he talked about the decolonization of religion. We need to de-religionize the entire world. We need to come out of our religious beliefs, our religious systems, and step out of religion altogether and embrace, as he said, that African spirituality, because spirituality is a 24/7 proposition. That the religiosity, you know, it does indeed bind and cause us to compartmentalize everything to where this is your system of worship. This is your day of worship. This is your dogma. This is your, you know. And so if we begin to move away from the idea of religion altogether and understand that our spirituality is like an umbrella that embraces and covers all aspects of our lives, be it the diet, what we eat during the day, how you treat your wife, what you teach your children, how you grow your food. All of these are elements within the 24/7 idea of being spiritual. So everything matters. And the moment that we take the posture that something does not matter in terms of our living in harmony and balance with the creative will, that is when, as we would say, you've set one foot into hell. And accept that you correct that course. And see, we simply say that you know, the consequences, the chaos, the violence, the wars, et cetera, disease, global warming, all these are consequences of our disobedience to that spiritual, those spiritual instructions that have been passed on to us in through whatever our cultural allegiances are. But nevertheless, you know, we could agree to disagree on some issues, but we also, at the end of the day, must keep in mind that when we're not operating in tandem, when they're not those parallels, when there are divergent ideas, that we have to acknowledge that we might all be wrong, but we cannot all be right. And it's incumbent upon us at this particular stage in our history, because if Africa does not make a U-turn, we are looking at our extinction as a people. And certainly there is an active enemy force that has it out to actually make good on that idea that there be no Africans in the future. We're watching this thing unfold. We're watching this COVID scenario unfold, this vaccine scenario unfold. And certainly there is an active evil adversary of spirituality, of righteous spirituality. And that is what we must come back in tune with in order to survive and to change the consequences, just as the consequences of our disobedience and not following the ancestors and aligning ourselves with that will. There are also consequences when we do realign with that will, with that divine will. Those consequences will flip to positive ones. They will flip to blessings. They will flip to prosperity and health and wealth, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got to tie back in to that. And we got to find a working model where the tangible attributes of what we say our belief systems are, that will not remain in the ether somewhere. It will have to take a tangible, practical manifestation that we can look at and analyze and say that works, and let us also apply that. Selah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Yakubi. So Yakubi, you have a comment too? Yeah.
Yes. Again, I thank you for this platform because the panel is distinguished. As I'm learning, so are we learning. But this remains to be my take. I have tried to study this story of creation throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Call them myths, call them creation stories. And this is stories, we are getting fragments of stories that have been passed down orally. We have been made to believe that a lot of what our people know was written down, but that is far from the African setting. Stories have always been passed down. And one thing we know with a reported story is that there might be the element of exaggeration. There might be the element of misinterpretation of symbolism. But one thing remains a constant. Life on earth did not come of its own existence. There had to be a force, there had to be a power, there had to be an energy behind it if we are being academic about it. There was the creation of the first being. Yes, I do also subscribe to the fall of man. I also do subscribe to a lot of what my brother Arya said, because this is what I have found to be constant. There's the fact that there's a disengagement from Tata Nzambi, if you're in the Congo, from Sonini Nanini, Nkulu Nkulu, Modimo, Moari, whatever your ancestry, whatever name they knew him by, which these are just attributes to him. Like when you go to the Congo and they talk of Tata Nzambi, Tata is father, and Nzambi can be interpreted to mean in the beginning, the father that was in the beginning. When you go to South Africa, they talk of Sonini Nanini, Somandla. I am that I am, the great one, which alludes to the fact that before the existence of this cosmic force of creation, which I call Untu, which animates, whether it's an animal, it's animated to be a Kintu. When it's a person, he's animated to be a Muntu. When it's a place, it's animated to be Vantu. And this is something you see across all the languages. So if we are to talk of creation from the point of religion, then we must know where the source is, because there's no one size fits all when it comes to this, because none of us can claim authoritatively to have been there at the point of creation. What we are discussing now is information gathered through years of research, or maybe hours of research. Pick your poison. But bottom line is, the creation of man has to be attributed to something beyond the understanding of man. And what goes beyond the understanding of man? That is the supernatural. When you come to Christianity, every nation was given a head. Credo Mutua talks of the Chitauri, the star people. I'm sure Sir Amadil would talk of the fallen angels. For us, in the we'll talk of Malekis, messengers that failed to deliver the intended message. Why? Because they intended to have the free will of man. There's something wrong with the narrative we have been fed. There's something wrong with the narrative that we are trying to go through. So in conclusion, I say, I cannot conclusively say this is how creation happened, but I do attribute it to a force beyond my understanding or the understanding of any honorable person in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yakubi. That was profound. I think my own experience, nature is the best book. Nature is the, if you don't, you can observe the work of an artist, but you should not confuse that work with the artist. If you walk into an art store and then you see a work of art, and you think, okay, because I have observed this work of art, then I have interacted with the artist. No, the artist is beyond sometimes his work. So we can get some ideas of who our creator is from observing his art, which is nature, but we cannot say that we have interacted directly with the creator. So Mr. Mitri, and then we'll have Paramatsu.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate hearing all these different understanding. And what I'm really trying to understand here is that there must be a purpose for us to have discussions. I don't like to have discussions just because I wanted to come and share intellectual words with each other. That's not something I like to do. I don't like to just get together, have a conversation, walk away, because we come to learn from each other, or we just came to just show each other what we have and then walk away. And to me, that is one of the problems that brought Africans to this state and point today. Now, we all identify there is a common problem. We identify this problem, which has nothing to do with the creator or the universe or anything, has to do with our inability for us to display willingness to learn a new understanding, to gravitate towards a new understanding, right? That fear that what I have, I can't put it down, because if I let it go and I take on something new, I'm losing something. Sometimes we invest so much into what we have, and then the thought of losing that investment, it's too much. So we cling to it, even though that investment might be wrong, even though that investment might be false or whatever, right? But the fundamental character, that flaw of a human being is that when you choose not to be willing to pursue that which is, because you're holding on to something, that attachment, that force of attachment is what keeps you from understanding the truth, right? There is a creator in this universe, but even if you heard what the creator was, or even if you saw the creator, your understanding of the creator already would prevent you from understanding that creator. It would prevent you because you've already built time, energy, space. You've spent nights, days putting this identity together of the creator. Once the real creator stood in front of you, what would you do? Would you give up all of that just to talk to the real creator? You wouldn't, because you already have in your imagination created your creator. But like I said, if you wish to know your creator, go outside in the world. I will show you guys a creator right now. You see inside of this glass, there's a liquid. There's a liquid here. Most of you are familiar with this liquid. It's called water. Now, none of you here know how old water is. None of you know, but it's instrument in your existence. From the very sperm that produced you, it was made out of liquid. And to the very egg, it's also composed of liquid. To the very cell structure, the base cell structure of a human being, what you call a cell, is made of water, right? From the very conception of human being born in water in your mother's womb, all of us here have mothers. Being born in your mother's womb, you started out as what? One cell, you divided into 2 cells. Then after that 2, you went to 6, you went to 8, then you went to 16. Then you form one nucleus, a singular nucleus. From that singular nucleus, you are curved into a little ball, and your umbilical cord connected to your mother's umbilical cord. And you were extracting nutrients from her. You formed a balloon of water around you in this pitch black darkness of your mother's womb. In this pitch black darkness, where no light exists, just water and darkness there, you consume nutrients day and night for a period. And when you could no longer withhold in that body, you broke out, came into a new dimension. And in this dimension, you found light, you found other things. But what we Africans have been told, right, that light is the creator, the creator is darkness and water. That's what it is. In your very spiritual books, it says in the beginning, there was the word, or the dark, there was a void, right? It says that. And void, what does void means? The brother said empty, it means the absence of physical, tangible matter. If I vacate this chair is considered void. But what is still present? The non-tangible. What is the non-tangible? The non-tangible is that which the human eyes cannot see. What does the human eye need to see? The human eye needs something called light in order for it to create a perception, an image. Without light, the human eye does not work. It does not function without light. If you close your eye right now, you will not be able to see my frame on the screen. But what will you see inside of you? You will see darkness. Inside of your cranial, what you call your brain, this brain which you're using to communicate with me, where you store all your knowledge, no light can penetrate into that brain. Do you know that in order for light to go into your brain, it has to be broken down into the smallest particle called an electrical impulse. And once that goes through your nerves, it travels, then it goes into your brain, it forms that thought in that water. What is inside of your brain? Water. Water and darkness, right? When you swallow food, that food goes in your throat and it enters your stomach. There's a whole civilization inside of your stomach, decomposing food, fighting virus, fighting infections. They live in pitch black darkness. If you go in your basement and you have moisture in your basement, and you are going to develop something called a mold in darkness. If you turn the light off in your basement and you put moisture there in the darkness and you close that room, mold will come up. What is mold? Mold is life. When animals want to bury their and give birth to their children. They bury their children in darkness. The creative process will always begin in darkness and water. So you, even if you saw the creator, you would not recognize the creator. Why? You would not, because you have built an image of your God, your creator. You have built one, and you're satisfied with that image. You're not a seeker. You're not searching for anything more than what you have. And so the thing that confuses many Africans is there is something called a name, right? Once you give something a name, right, the name itself becomes an identifier, but it's not the vessel, it's not the person. It's just a label you put on something. So sometimes a name comes with a description, but it's not the person. I have a name, Mitri, right? But there is an entire environment beyond this name, right? So sometimes we African ascribe a name to say, we have a name and we're satisfied with it. But fundamentally, nobody creates anything in this universe without taking care of it, without being in its presence day and night. The creator would not have created human beings without constantly being interacting with human beings. It's just that you would never know that the creator was interacting with you, keeping you alive. You would never know. Why you would never know is because you've built a very sophisticated image in your mind of your creator. And the real creator, you wouldn't be able to notice that real creator. You wouldn't be able to see it. You wouldn't be able to understand it. Why? Because that image is what you have. It's very important to you. I'm going to end here in a few seconds, right? What I want the African people to understand, whatever you're seeking is real, right outside your window, real. 85% of the universe is darkness. Then there are gases, then there's solid material. On planet Earth, we have the same equivalence here, right? It says there's no date when darkness was created. There's no date. There's no date when water was created. In that book called the Bible, it says, God is a word, it's a name. God is a name. But there is one thing that the Bible gets right. The Bible tells you that there were two elements there, two forces there, darkness and water, above the face of each other, masculine and feminine. The masculine would be the darkness and the feminine would be the water, because the feminine energy would be the energy that produced the systems of life. And the masculine energy would be the energies that destroy. That's why you have a black hole in the universe that destroys entire galaxies. And then the water element, which is the hydrogen, rebuilds entire galaxies. This process occurs right on planet Earth, but you wouldn't notice that. People wouldn't notice it because the stories that we have are so dear to us. There's nothing wrong with stories. Our ancestors created those stories to tell their children to build their imagination, which I have children, you have children, that person have children. You, before their children go to bed, you have to tell them, but what is it called? A bedtime story. When I was growing up in Africa, every night we would gather around the fire in the village and they would tell a story about a spider called Anansi and all the different things that Anansi did. If I told my children those stories and they told their children those stories, you have to understand that if you are ever seeking the creator, the default is right outside your window. At night, every one of you, no matter how powerful you are, no matter you might be king, you might be Donald Trump, you might be Vladimir Putin, but when sleep comes, you hear the summon of that creator. When sleeps come, when this thing called sleep, the summon of that creator, you fall into that darkness and your consciousness leaves your body. It's right happening to you every day, but you wouldn't know that because for you, the image, the story, which is good, and it's great for us to have stories to tell our children. But as Africans, what we need right now, we need to be rooted in physical, practical, tangible reality. We can build the stories along with our physical, tangible reality. But if we live in the imagination, we are going to have, me and you have different imagination. I can imagine a whole creation story and I can tell you, another person can imagine, another person can imagine it, another person can imagine, and we will be at variance, at difference. We'll be in argument all day and night. But there's one absolute truth that no human can deny. This water has an effect on the human body. Your blood has an effect. Your sperm has an effect. Every creature on earth goes through the same cycle of creation and death. When death occurs, you will decay. When birth occurs, you will gain a form. Every creature goes through that. So when I started, I said the cycle of life and death, the seasons are always going to be here. Even if you're born today, you're guaranteed that if you live, you will see the dry season or the winter or the summer. You're guaranteed that. So the creation, you are guaranteed if you live off the 25, you'll be able to produce sperm, you'll be able to produce a child. And that's creation right there. But that creation is not sophisticated enough. It's not, fancy enough. The creation we seek is the one where there's all these type of stuff, images and all that stuff. So that's what I can say. Like, my understanding of the creation is very rooted in practical, tangible reality. And that's how I look at it. And I think that's how we Africans need to go. Why? Because it was so important for the Europeans and the Arabs to trap our imaginations in those worlds. They knew the kind of imagination we had as Africans, and it was very important for them to use that imagination as a weapon against us. And the only way for you to break free from that spell, that strangulation, is for you to come to the default state of existence, that which is outside your window, that which is internal, physical, practical. And no one will argue with you. No one can challenge you after you show them this. So I'm going to stop right here. Thank you, guys. I much respect to all of you. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitri. Well, that is beautiful. I think it is absolutely beautiful to hear, when our own African people, sons of the soil, speak this mighty, about the existence of our creation and also our creation. That's the vision of Zolabantu. What we do is we bring African people together to let you know that, even though we have different beliefs or we've been put in all these conditions, we can still come together in love and have a beautiful conversation. Because if we're talking about building Africa for us in the future, we will have to come together. So these are foundations to know that, okay, if we're going to come together, we have African Muslims. If we're going to come together, we have African Christians. If we're going to come together, we have African Hebrews. How can we then build together despite our differences? That's the power of having this kind of conversations. And I'm really happy to have each and every one of you coming to share. We'll have this, we'll have Brother Mitri, have Mr. Sa Amadio, and also Brother Yakubi over the next weeks to have this kind of conversation. So it doesn't mean because someone says something different to what you brought up to, you shouldn't listen. Mr. Mitri says you have to be open. In spirituality, we say you have to have an open spirit, a spirit that is mobile, willing to learn from others. Religion has brought division. Why? Because they taught us that because we believe in different things, then we should kill each other. We should always dominate each other. But we can still look at outside in the flowers. The flowers are different. We have yellow flowers, we have red flowers, but they still grow in the same soil. Why can't we do the same? So our differences should not hinder us from uniting. I would just want to get to some of the audience if they want to say something. Miss Faith, you've been here. Just 1 minute before we close. Anything you'd like to say, Miss Faith? Been by.
Just to say that I'm learning a lot, which is the reason why I joined. And I think I agree with the previous two speakers to say that we cannot really know our Creator. Yes, we see the evidence of His work, and I agree that it is us who gave Him a name, which is how we understand what we've learned, what we've been taught. But really, I think the Creator is unknowable, but we can learn about Him from His creation. So that would be my submission.
Thank you. A minute from Mr. Ndai.
Yes. I just want to say thank you for having me.
Mr. Ndai, are you audible?
I guess it's the one hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something to go and reflect on. I'm really here to learn, and I like hearing the different perspectives and trying to see how they match with that who spoke today. I really enjoyed listening.
Thank you. We have you can see Sika Bopa. Sika. Okay, we have iPhone. I can see iPhone here. Redo Fat. Redo Fat. Yeah. Yes, Redo.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. Can you hear me?
Sure, go on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for the information that was shared. It was quite fruitful and very informative and interesting as well, in the sense that, there's a lot of learning and research that needs to be done by one, depending on the levels of understanding of the topic. And I would like to believe that we are evidence as people of someone who created the entire universe. And I believe that strongly. And there is an owner to everything mostly. And as part of the creation, definitely there is a very strong force that owns us. We belong to somebody or a strong force, if I can leave it like that. And thank you very much. I learn and I enjoy all these sessions. There's still more to learn every day. Thank you very much.
Thank
Toda.
you. Toda. Whereas I hear.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Avi. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to thank the speakers. Of course, it's always very fruitful, and we learn a lot from these discussions. And yeah, but I, for myself, I do agree that as well with some of my other colleagues as well, that we do, as Africans and the individuals that we truly do need a much sort of organic, African paradigm. We need a new paradigm, and yeah, and I think through these type of forums, we can find access to those new paradigms, and we need to embrace it, and this is how we're going to be stronger together. But yeah, thank you very much, and the one who comes in peace is always welcome. Positive energy and creation energy to all, one and all things.
Wonderful. We have Precious Kana. Precious, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Precious.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, Sarah Madiel. I guess that's the only one that I know from this forum. And I will say, I just joined in a little bit late because I didn't know we had this meeting. But for the little that I've heard, it's really enlightening and it's a continual learning journey. And from Kenya, representing, I'm glad to be part of this winning team. Shalom.
Shalom, thank you. The video of the presentation will be available on our YouTube. We've been honored to have you all watching it. We'll be in touch with each and every one of you. Brother Maxwell has joined us late. We hope we can have him present and talk in the next session, but we have to come to a close because of time. And thank you so much, Mama Amalia, for connecting us to Sir Amadeo. Mama Amalia, thank you so much.
Shalom, hallelujah, no problem. Giving all praises to the Holy Creator of us all. That's what we're here to talk about, right?
Absolutely. If you like to get in touch, yes, if you like to get in touch with Sir Amadeo, you can get in touch with me and visit the Organic African Paradigm YouTube page on YouTube. It's amazing. You learn so many things that Mr. Mitri has spoken about. And also the Bantu Re-Education TV on YouTube. You find Mr. Yakubi over there. Let us always come together and share this beautiful knowledge. We thank you all for joining us. Ms. Simone Dionel said something on the text. Okay, I would say I got to know our Creator through science. So it's interesting to hear this. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us for today. Have a beautiful week ahead. And the Creator is in you. The kingdom of the Creator is in you. Mr. Mitri says, just look outside. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitri, Mr. Sir Amadeo, and Mr. Yakubi. Thank you all. Hallelujah. And have a beautiful week ahead. And let's continue to have this kind of conversations as we build our new Africa very soon.
That's the objective. Consider it done.
Kembo.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, guys, positive energy and creation energy to you. The one who comes to learn is especially always welcome. You guys have a good day now.
Thank you.